Rinne comisiún na talú na chinú dearnach. Bach Inishshark fácíle na héanachaí mara agus únaí a hanhaintere. Bhí na hillaní le bogu go dtí baile feardan Fountain Hill ag an gladach dú gard an chleigean. Tógu títhe bega an sin, agus leis an gebrú 1960 ag druidir misteach, bhínú na socracha an tileán a réigean.
We left on the 20th of October, 1960. And 3 weeks before that, we got the worst weather that ever came. Everybody is saying, oh, we won't go. It'll have to be put off now to springtime or whenever the weather gets fine again, you know. And lo and behold, on the 20th day of October, it was the most beautiful day you ever seen.
The last inhabitants have said goodbye to Inishshark. They're going to the Irish mainland, giving up the struggle against storms and isolation that often last for weeks on end.
That day stands out in my mind, all right. I'll tell you, I was pretty angry. I did not want to move. Everybody was taking their stuff down to the pier, to the boat, you know. And I hadn't even my delf packed. Plus, I was trying to get kids ready. I did not want to leave the island.
6 or 7 boats came back from Buffon. And the next thing, everybody started moving down all the stuff.
Everybody was drawn down, furniture, cups and saucers, teapots, pans.
Pots, skillet pots, 3-legged pots, bedsteads.
Cattle, hay, furniture. So it's just like a fairground. Everybody's going everywhere and trying to get everything done in daylight hours.
The big boats could not come in near the pier, you know. So everything has to be put into the curragh and from there out to the boat and from there on to Cleggan.
All the daily Irish papers were on strike. But there were 2 or 3 of the English papers over. And I remember a picture afterwards of Thomas Joseph Lacey carrying his bedstead. And I kind of think of him, he had the iron bedstead coming down. The last movement of the bed leaving the house going onto the boat. A real traumatic day to see a whole island with the history of the years gone by and everything else gone. It was the end of an era.
We waited on, and with myself and my brother and the 2 Gavin lads. We were the last 4 to leave it. So myself and my brother went up to the house, I never will forget it, and we sat down and cried. The house was empty, nothing there.
Maar barlam law is on noblien malud haun on so de vir on regen is lawn and chlorn. I got to London go.
After mar a bhí scéal Inishark ag tíocht chuna dhéirí, Iúltaí fear amháin taistil amach go dtí an mórthír.
Old Tom Lacey, fisherman, 78, is remaining on Inishshark to live out his life alone.
His 2 sons, Thomas Joseph and Festy, came to me and said, Father, you'll have to go up and talk to my father. My father doesn't want to go. So I went up to Thomas, and all he did was wave the 2 out. Out. And then, Father, I'm not going. He was like 26 years of age, just a young lad in his eyes. And trying to talk to Thomas and, persuade him, look at Thomas, you can't stay on an island on your own if the weather gets bad. How will the family do? The son, I want every one of you to go, he said. He said, I'm going to put a big fire down, and you see that door, front door of the house, I'm going to leave that open. And then he went to talk about the 2 sons who were lost the 10 years previously. His whole thing was, if this island is evacuated and there's nobody here, what about those, they've died. There's no burial place, there's nothing.
He could still see where his boys was drowned, like, you know. And he probably thinks, well, he had their spirit there with him and he was as near to that place as he ever would have been or ever would be again.
I spoke to him about that night on the island. He said he set a table for 3 places and then he went to walk back the low road back as far as Garden's house and came back. He indicated that he was hoping that the 2 sons he lost would come back to visit him in some shape or form, but he never had a sign. He sat on the island, he ate at the table on his own and surrendered to the Atlantic the following day by being evacuated when they came back in from the mainland for him.
Now, Thomas said to me that they came to him. They came to him during the night. But I think what he meant was that he himself came to peace with himself and that he had a sense of that his 2 sons were no longer hovering around lost. They were at peace, they were with their God, and Thomas himself was at rest. So much so that he got up and left the island, which was, when you think of somebody in their 80s all their lives long, and you close the door and you walk out, and that's what Thomas did.
The next day we got up, we had a look around and seen all the people and all the lovely girls walking the road, and so it was heaven to us, you know.
I think all the young people really was delighted because they'd be on dry land. They would be able to go to the picture house in Clifton and they'd be able to go to dances in Clifton on the mainland and not to travel by sea.
Tegan sé éasca gon den óg arú ó áid go chéile. Ach, nar a hinsta machs na blianta. Ní mahan rude gon teannana go meach arú ó na hachéin ó sáil a chonaí na tíile. Níl tresin ní ghanan sé an wadóh agus in an intin ní bhín sé tosta.
I could see in my parents' eyes every day they lived that their heart was broken for their island. So I remember my father when he went out to sow the potatoes, and when he put the spade down on the ground, oh, he got an awful shock. He was going around for half the day trying to find a place to sow a ridge of potatoes. Everywhere he went was rock, 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 solid rock, all everywhere he went. And it broke his heart.
But Mum was delighted to be out. She often said regardless, I am glad to be away from it. Because, and I'll tell you why, because she suffered in the night, you see, waiting for them to come home.
Gafedi sin tala vistich hortroho mach, vedi sosta. Ach ni rodr nan sin Mar beor ne PC bag talton na viakwer in Ilan, na mar viakwer in Morhir. Ni dolchan kine vian ach, came sheer, sherago wanterstako hiechtamach in Morhir. Goradar Morhir, agus nachra an Yilimal vi chacabla bad, agus le cursi bad, vidar an jarmati on the yeshin, vidar an acan wohir, ach harishin, nie taragora en montashti intach ele ako.
Their feet was on the ground. The disappointment was the land was poor. But they didn't have to get into a car or a boat. And they could get their provisions on foot or by transport. And the fear of the sea, really, that fear compensated, I suppose, in a way in their minds as we're safe and we'll put up with it.
Fresh gur bánaíomh an Tileán, chuiridar go mór le síl na mórthíre agus síl an timpplacht a radar a cónaíán. Fiúan mátá Inishshark tréciige, níl an cultúr tréciige ag dramar gamach.
Well, I was bred, born and reared there. I was fed and watered in it, and the nature is there. There is something about it that lies deep with me.
Fountain Hill, I never called it home, really. I could never call it home. The first thing I used to do was to go near Cleggan there and looking at shark. And if I dreamt at night, it was always about shark.
Inishshark was in my blood from the age of 4 months, and it's there to this day. And I'll continue going to Inishshark as long as I'm able to. I'll be in there this summer, please God, and do my own little pilgrimage and recall the happy days. It's my island for the day. It's heaven to me.
It can also be very sad going into the island, you know, because it's where you're bred, born and reared and where you spend your youthful days. And even now when I lie down in bed at night and if I dream, it's in the island I am, as a little boy.
You never forget your childhood days. When you grew up from realising who you were, where you are, and the surroundings, and the people. That'll stick in your mind forever. The dangers of living on an island was there. But there was laughter, and there was music, and there was song. We had a watery road, in fact.
Ceanamod lenar Conamara 65 bliain go chomisisiún béile is a éireann iad a dúna ag deachlog áit mé léirgesaing ar an óránaí daracho cahaim sa glár céir bhé, agus iad a máirt ag a hochtach lo camad súl ar híal an léineo in Inishshark.